Welcome to European Forum Altbach. I'm Claudia Torwinska and you're watching TVP World. And it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Professor Tim Crane, Professor of Philosophy and Pro-Rector at the Central European University. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
So today, I would like to talk about AI-generated content and the sort of dangers that it poses to democracies across the globe, with a particular focus on Europe, but also to speak about civil society literacy when it comes to this new medium that entered our lives by storm. I know that you've taken part in the session, Democracy in the Digital Age, Unmasking the Power of Deception, and this is something that I would like us to focus on. So I'd like to start by asking you, what could be a pretty tricky question to some. When we look at AI, do you think it's a force of good or evil, and why?
It's a hard question because it's neither, really. I mean, it's an incredibly useful technology. It's a remarkable technology, and it's bound to be used for good in some ways, and it can also be used for evil. So it depends on the people in charge. And I think in some ways this is the problem, that the people we have in charge of this new technology and the people who are giving us this new technology are not exactly the sort of people that you would want in charge of something as powerful as this.
So what about the regulation? Because as I said, this is something that emerged quite quickly and it's developing at a breakneck pace, and we're seeing new content being created. We see how it's being used or misused by both. We have hackers, we have governments, so there are those two sides that are operating with this new technology. Who is in charge of AI?
Well, the problem is that in Europe here we live in a very different kind of environment than the environment in which the AI companies live. They are basically unregulated. And they're immensely wealthy, as you know. I mean, and these companies, have more money than many countries. They're immensely powerful, and they now have the ear of the most volatile president and presidential administration that there's been in the United States. So I think it would be very unrealistic to think that we in Europe can do anything to regulate the flow of artificial intelligence. So we're not China. We don't build firewalls around Europe, but there will always be freedom in Europe, we hope, and freedom will involve the freedom to use AI. So that's our problem. We cannot regulate it. Regulation is too slow as well. The European Union would take so long to regulate anything, and by that time, as we know, AI will have moved yet faster and made even more advances.
So how do you think we actually, as a civil society, protect ourselves from AI? Because from what you've told me, it seems that there is some sort of an emergence of a new global power when it comes to that. Because if you say that there is more money in some of the AI companies than in some countries, then where's the balance of power?
I think this is the situation we're in. It is a new global superpower in a way, except that there are 5 of them, and they're all fighting for our attention, and they're fighting for their investors' money as well. So it's not. I don't think the situation is hopeless, but we shouldn't think of it in terms of regulation and the rule of law, because there's an element of the Wild West about it at the moment, that they can't. They don't tell us. The AI companies don't tell us how they train their machines. They don't tell us which people they use to test the machines. And they present this mythology of AI as something that is incredibly wild and powerful, and that could, if it's released, it would be like Pandora's box and take over the whole world. And they should know that this isn't true. And this is, I think, one of the things that we have to explain to people somehow. So the key for us to get to grips with AI is education, to explain to people what it is and what it isn't.
How do we educate about things that have not yet been fully discovered and are developing at a very fast speed?
It's a very difficult question, and but this is one of the things I want to try and do. The fundamental question isn't that difficult. We don't have to understand all the complexities of the technology to understand what an AI machine is. It's a computer. It's a computer which is designed to solve a problem. It is not a mind. It doesn't think. It doesn't have reasoning. It doesn't have desires of its own. It will not try and take over the world. It will not have general intelligence.
Can you promise us?
I promise that. I promise. Because it's a computer. This is the thing. So, and whereas the AI leaders, the leaders of Meta, OpenAI, Google, and so on, they want to persuade people that this is really this incredibly powerful thing that's like this monster, that only they can control this monster, which is why you shouldn't if anyone regulates it, it should be they're regulating themselves, right? Which is like, you know, handing over to the investment banks the power of regulating banks, you know. And it's clearly not a good idea in the case of banks, and it's not a good idea in the case of AI. But as I say, regulation is an unrealistic hope. I think what we need is education. So if I could give a practical example, people are now asking AI machines for answers to factual questions. They're asking these machines to, you know, I don't know how many people live in Poland or something like this. Now, they may get the right answer, but they may not. Asking an AI machine, a GTP or whatever, is not the same thing as asking Wikipedia. Wikipedia is checked by people against the facts in the world. All the AI machine is doing is reproducing data that's on the internet, and there's no guarantee. In the nature of the machine itself, there's no guarantee that that information will be correct. Now, if people can understand that, then they will understand why you shouldn't use ChatGPT to answer your questions about the world, and you should go back to Wikipedia or other parts of the internet.
It is information that is very limited in its nature, in a sense.
It's limited in the sense that, yeah, there's no guarantee that it's correct. And people need to know that. Of course, there's no guarantee that any information on the internet is correct, but we, as people, can check it against other sources of information.
How do we counter the content that is being created by artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to disinformation, when it comes to deepfake technology? This is something that seems quite scary for those who are on the receiving end, because how do you distinguish between information that's available on the internet with such a powerful tool that can create something that looks real?
Yeah, I think there are really difficult issues about deep fakes. I think a lot of the anxiety about misinformation and disinformation is exaggerated, or it's unnecessary. After all, there isn't anything new about misinformation and disinformation, and governments have been spreading propaganda for hundreds of years, and they've been telling falsehoods to the people for hundreds and thousands of years to keep the people in check. So that aspect of things is not new, and I think actually the amount of misinformation and disinformation produced by AI is not significant, according to various psychologists and social scientists who've worked on this. So I myself, I don't think this is the main problem. I think people like to follow content that supports things that they already believe. So we all do this, whether we are liberals or leftists or on the right wing or Trumpites or Europeans. We all look for a reinforcement of the things that we already believe. And a lot of the things that people say are misinformation are just bits of propaganda which are spread by political parties to their own people. So a lot of the lies that Viktor Orban spreads in Hungary are things that people believed anyway. And
but
AI is not a particular risk here, I feel.
But don't you think that AI actually provides some sort of an evidence? Because it's one thing to hear a spoken word, but it's a completely different thing to see something, because that provides you with an evidence. And that's, I think, where the problem about AI is, don't you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think if we start seeing deep fake images being used widely, then we should start worrying about this. But I think at the moment that the use of misinformation and incorrect content on the internet is not the real problem, I feel. Not the real problem with AI, anyway. See, I mean, AI is one thing, of course. The internet is another. And what's true is that the internet is full of lies and it's full of deception, but it's also full of knowledge. And this is why somehow the key to the whole thing is education, to give individuals a sense of self-criticism, of how they can look for actual evidence for their views.
How do we look for that actual evidence? Those are all difficult questions. I do realize that, but I feel like
there isn't one answer. Yeah.
I feel like all of us are asking ourselves the same question. Do you think that AI is particularly being used right now in this day and age when it comes to hybrid warfare? This is something that we've seen happen in Europe, particularly in the context of Russian aggression.
Yes, and definitely. Bots and spreading lies, falsehoods, internet, and a lot of on the internet, and a lot of trolling, the trolling that goes on. But again, the responsibility here is with the people who are doing it. AI itself is incapable of creating a troll. There can't be such a thing. There can be people who use an AI machine to create trolls. And then, so the problem there is with the people creating them.
And finally, I would like to ask you about human creativity. Do you think that human creativity is going to be thwarted as a result of further development of AI? Or perhaps we're going to, as humans, find different avenues of overcoming that challenge?
Yeah, I suppose you have to look on the bright side, and there are some. I'm sure there are some contributions to creativity that AI will make, but AI will never replace human creativity, and
that gives hope.
That follows from the nature of it as a computation. A computation can only solve a problem that you specified in advance for yourself, and so the AI itself can't create its own problems and then solve them. It's not that kind of thing. So I have no worries about human creativity being eclipsed by AI, but perhaps I do have worries about students writing essays. That's a real problem. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us are thinking the same.
Yes.
It's quite nice to know that a person's been raised in a day and age without AI, where they could actually learn and unleash that potential. But let's be hopeful. Thank you so much for joining me, Professor.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, Tim Crane, Professor of Philosophy at the pro-rector at the Central European University, was my guest, sorry, but hopefully a friend too. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you so much for tuning in and for watching TVP World.